Hi everybody, I am back with Pax. We are up to chapter 13 today. So chapter 12 left off with Peter is back with Vola at her house and she is going to let him stay. She's going to nurse him back to health so that he's strong enough to make that 200-mile walk back to his home where Pax is. And she's making him sleep, though, out on the porch with her pet. Do you remember? There's a pet raccoon, right? Yeah. So chapter 13, now we go back to Pax's story. And remember, Pax is with Gray and Bristle and Runt right now. And I believe the last time we were with Pax, Bristle told the story of how her parents and Runt's parents were murdered by the farmer. Okay, chapter 13. When Pax awoke, it was late afternoon. The ache had cramped his belly the past few days, and it was worse today when he tried to rise. He lost his balance for a second. His muscles were trembling. He surveyed them for injury with a distanced curiosity. Once he had been ill, his boy had forced a pill down his throat. Afterward, his senses had been dulled and his reactions slowed. He felt the same way now. He dropped to the cool dirt and watched as, below, Gray and his mate emerged from their rest to scent the air, relieve themselves, and then set off for food. Bristle sprang out from a den beside him, stopped only to order her brother to stay behind, and then trotted off to hunt herself. On the day he had gotten into the car with his boy, Pax had sensed the tension and refused his morning kibble. So it had been now 3 full days since he had eaten. Although Pax had never seen death, he understood that it awaited him if he did not find food. This thought produced no sense of urgency and drifted away. A second thought, however, that he must find his boy and see him safe, stirred him to rise again, first bracing himself on the forelegs before straightening to his haunches. After a moment, his head cleared. He wandered past the dens Bristle and Runt shared. There he smelled game buried in the soft earth. So game would be like the birds they hunted, or it's their food, and they had buried it in the soft earth. But they were marked with powerful warning scents, so he did not dig them up. Farther out, a few gnawed-over carcasses were discarded, and they were scoured clean by lower-ranking scavengers. Pax began to poke through the carrion. Only the tail end of a marsh rat held any meat at all, too rancid and gristly even for the crows. It was crawling with maggots. Pax lowered his head to the remains. He opened his jaw, but the smell sent him back, reeling. This was not food. He staggered back a few steps and buried his muzzle in a patch of new clover, chewing the sprouts to cleanse the foul odor from his sensitive nasal passages. He swallowed and then began to feed tentatively. The act of eating was a comfort to his shrunken belly, although a false one. The clover wouldn't strengthen him, and after a few mouthfuls, the clear thought arose again. He must find his boy. Just then he heard something tear through the grass. Before his sluggish senses could respond, he felt a solid weight plow into him. Runt pounced on top of Pax, crowing at a successful ambush. And when Pax didn't move to shake him off, Runt began to examine him. Pax lay still while the smaller animal sniffed and licked him, too weak to waste energy batting him away. Unwell? Pax closed his eyes again, and the lowering glancing sunlight, and did not respond. Runt bounded off and came back a few minutes later with a worm hanging from his jaw, and he dropped it at Pax's paw. Pax shrank away, but the thoughts he had had earlier surfaced again. He had to find his boy. He could avoid death if he ate. Pax picked up the worm and bit into it. Unused to the taste of live flesh, Pax retched and twisted away. Runt dug up another worm and dropped it in front of Pax, and this time Pax got to his feet and took a few steps before sinking back down. Runt followed and nudged him. Eat! Pax mustered as much dominance as he could. Leave! The younger fox gazed at the older one for a moment and then turned and trotted into the grass. Relieved, Pax lay his head on his paws. He did not have the energy for resistance now. But Runt reappeared after a few moments, something round in his mouth, and he dropped his gift, and it broke open. What do you think that is? Something round, and if he dropped it, it would break open. It was an egg. The scent called up a sharp memory. Once, when he was very young, Pax had found a hard white orb while exploring his human's kitchen counter. He had batted at it, thinking it was one of his boy's playthings. It had rolled onto the floor, and it cracked open, spilling its delicious secret. Peter's father had come in while he was licking at the last drops and smacked him away. His flank had stung from the blow, but that egg had been worth it. And since then, Pax managed an exploratory visit to the kitchen counter every time he was left alone, looking for more of them. A few times he had gotten lucky. The quail egg Runt had brought was smaller, its speckled shell flecked with dried grass, and it smelled gamier than the ones his humans ate. But there was no mistaking it. Egg. Pax rose, and Runt backed away to allow Pax to lap up the yolk prize. He licked the grass clean of every drop and then looked up, eager to express his gratitude. But Runt was gone, and in a few moments he came back, 2 more eggs held carefully in his mouth. Pax devoured them. Runt left and returned twice more. Pax ate steadily until finally 7 eggs swelling his shrunken belly taut. He dropped to the sandy apron in front of the dens, and he closed his eyes. Runt leaped onto a gnarled root above the dens. He drew himself up into his full height, and while Pax slept, the ragged little Runt kept watch. Oh, I can picture that in my head. Runt was kind of Pax's hero that day, wasn't he? Brought him those 7 eggs, and then while Pax is going to rest, he is going to keep watch so nothing happens to his friend. And that's the end of chapter 13. I like that one. All right, I'll see you next time.